Is it recording? Is it recording? I think it's recording. Oof. Okay, well, this is different. So, full disclosure, this is completely out of my comfort zone. As a journalist, I have for years been trained not to make the story about myself, not to talk about myself, not to even think about myself, not to have opinions. And I am going to do something that might not work out, might really mess me up, or might be interesting, who knows. But I am going to take a complete leap of faith and do what my therapist has been telling me for years, and that's to see a sex therapist. I don't know why I've put this off for so long, um, but I guess now is as good a time as any. I am feeling a little bit tired and a bit excited, but mostly nervous and a teeny bit confused as to what might happen. So the way we're going to do this is going to be really fluid. It's definitely an experiment. I'm going to record it with no producers. And then I am going to go through it. I might not even share any of it with anyone. And I might share parts of it. By taking you on at least parts of this journey, I can sort of help demystify this. And this is what I'm telling myself. Because for me as a journalist, to get into anything, it has to be a part of my work. I kind of tend to ignore everything else to do with myself. So I've turned this into a project. I'm going to go on this journey. I don't know what to expect. I will let you in on parts of it and let's see what happens. It might be a complete disaster. I might have a breakdown or hopefully a breakthrough or two. I'm Sahar, a journalist on a quest to understand the world through the lens of how people do sex. I'm a little bit nervous about this. I don't know why.
It's a big project.
It's a big project.
And I'm not talking about the video. I'm talking about, the area you're deciding to talk about, even though you've had therapy. You haven't focused on this in the way you're going to focus on it now.
Yeah. And you know what? It's like I've done loads of stories on sex and trauma, especially around the world, like really, really deep stuff. And there are two issues here. One, because I've heard so many horrendous things, I am always ashamed to delve into this because I'm like, my problems are so tiny compared to them. But at the same time, the other issue is that there are all these things that I haven't thought about. I've been so involved with other people's problems and pain for so long as a journalist that not even as a journalist, as a person, I'm always the one who's like probing my friends. I'm always the one giving advice or listening or, just being that person. And I never like open up about things myself. And if anything, I always make really vulgar jokes about sex and sexuality and things like that. And if someone like didn't know me and saw me, they'd be like, "Oh, she's so open, she's so sorted out." But in a way, like that's been my defense mechanism, and I feel like we're going somewhere I haven't been before. Even with therapy, I didn't feel like that because with therapy, I was like, "Yeah, I know I had a messed up past. I know I grew up in refugee camps. I know I come from Iran. I know I have mommy and daddy issues." With this, I'm kind of like, you know.
The thing is that what you've just described are some excellent ways of keeping yourself from looking at it. Like those are fab defenses. You created the most amazing, resilient set of skills.
Yeah.
To make sure that you could function and function well and that you didn't have to go back there.
Yeah. I mean, look at me. I started a whole podcast about sex without even going there.
I get it. It is remarkably common in people with who also minimize their trauma, who have experienced various forms of catastrophic trauma, which doesn't have to necessarily do with what amount of time or how much. It's something about the intimacy of certain kinds of trauma that shakes everything. There's this incredible resilience and ability to create this shell and set of defenses so that you can function and be in the world. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to function.
Yeah. And you know what? I currently feel like I'm in a dark room with the lights switched off because I know there are things that are holding me back. And I'll tell you about them in a minute. And I know there are things that bother me and not only impact me in a bedroom, but in day to day that come from sex and sexuality. But like because I'm in this dark room, I don't even know what they are and I'm too
Yeah.
scared to look.
Yeah. Well, you've got a companion to look with you that'll hold the space and make sure that you don't fall into any pit that you can't come out of. That's the
That's
way I approach
reassuring.
this. And there's nothing that I'll be able to say that won't make this scary, and that's okay. Like, sitting with the fear is important too. Um, it's it's a hell of a journey, and, of all the kinds of work that I do, this is the kind of work I enjoy the most
Why?
because when you make changes here, when you're talking about not just deep trauma, but deep sexual trauma, which, like, affects people don't realize that sexual trauma affects all forms of intimacy, not just sexual intimacy. It affects the way we connect to other human beings, and when you actually help somebody make changes there, you really shift things in their lives. So let me ask you to start from your childhood so that I have a sense of where you've come from. So, where were you born?
Tehran.
Okay. And who raised you?
My mom and dad. Although my dad was mostly away.
Okay. And are your parents still alive?
My father passed away when I was 21.
Okay. And your mom is
Still
alive
around.
and well, or are you not
Yep,
sure?
alive, well.
Do you have siblings?
I have a sister. She's 9 years younger than me. As soon as she was born, I was like, I kind of took the role of her mom. Very
Yeah.
dysfunctional relationship.
Okay. So what was your relationship like with your parents when you were growing up?
That's a complicated question. So as I said, I was born in the Islamic Republic of Iran. When my mom got pregnant with my sister, my mom had very severe depression, and that's when things changed. Uh, and my mom wanted to divorce, but in Iran, of course, you don't have ways to divorce. And then we left Iran. We escaped Iran when I was 11 or 12 with my mom and my sister. My dad remained in Iran. We escaped his political persecution. We were away from him for a few years. Me, my mom, and my sister, who was 4 at the time, got smuggled into Denmark, lived in some refugee camps there. And my life sort of like changed from this kind of happy childhood. And there's a few things in Iran that we should talk about because my past is kind of divided in these sections. Before my sister was born, after my sister was born, life in refugee camps. Then me and my mom became even closer, but in a very dysfunctional way. Later, I read in a book that it's called something like incest, like incest, when your parents rely on you to be their therapist, to be their parents, because it's that intrusive. My mom started relying on me to open up about all of her problems with my dad, how she really wanted a divorce but couldn't and was stuck with him for the sake of us children because he would get the custody and she would have nowhere to live. And like it was just weird. Like things started getting really weird. And then we were deported from Denmark, so we had to get smuggled out of the country in the back of lorries to go to Germany, and a few months spent getting smuggled from border to border. We were homeless, sleeping rough on the streets for a few weeks in several countries like France and Paris and Spain. And then we ended up coming to the UK when I was like 14 or 15. And here we were refugees who were very poor, again, going from place to place, and then living in like council flats. And then we finally got accepted and I went to school. And then my dad eventually joined. And when my dad came, I remember he said once to my face to someone else, it was like, yeah, this is not the daughter that left Iran. I should probably not say it, but like our relationship will never be the same. And he came back with severe depressions. His relationship with my mom was worse and worse. With me, it was terrible. And yeah, it was just a very bad relationship. And sex or sexuality in Iran was so taboo. Like you were never, it was something you don't talk about. I remember like we went on holiday when I was like 7 or 8, and I woke up in the morning and I saw my mom and dad kissing because we were like sleeping in this room, and we were like sleeping on their like mosquito nets. I saw them kissing. I was like, oh, like you would never see them kiss. Like you never see that in Iran. And I remember like I remember writing aggressively in my diary that disgusting this that. There was a couple of other occasions. I remember I always say this as a joke, but it's actually not funny. I say this and I've always used this, like I always tell this story as a joke, but it's not that funny. I remember I was like 5 or 6. I was really young. I don't even remember. I remember I was doing like gymnastics and I was wearing my little gymnastic shorts. I would always be scared of the dark. So I ran into my mom and dad's bed at night and they would sometimes let me sleep. And I was sleeping on my belly and my mom got up and went to the bathroom, and my dad's hand I felt come very slowly towards me. He grabbed my ass, like fiddled, and then he went like that, and he clucked his my ass, and he went like that. So a bunch of things like that happened, and I was like, "Ew, my mom and dad are doing something so wrong. They're gonna go to hell." Like I couldn't even like formulate what this is. Like, imagine Iran, a country where everyone's like on full on hijab, like everything is like chants every morning, chants death to Israel, death to America, and like it was just such a closed environment, and for a kid that age, from that environment where, all you see on TV is propaganda and, like, Muslim women and hell and heaven, instilling fear in you. Experiencing this, I thought this is the most disgusting, disturbing thing, and I remember I had no one to go to, so I went to my grandmother, and I was like, "Grandmother, I'm seeing these things, like, I don't know what to make of it," like, and she was like, she listened, and she was like, "Don't ever mention this to anyone." I was like, "Why?" She goes, "It's shameful. Don't ever." And then she kind of walked away. She went, and like she really acted weird with me. So I was so ashamed. When this happened, I was just like, I was so curious. And I was curious I was like really curious about things that I wasn't supposed to know. So when I started seeing these things happen, I remember I kind of like suspected it might have something to do with reproduction, maybe it's human nature. Like I had no way else that we didn't have
You had no
internet, didn't
you
have
had no
phones,
comparison.
nothing. But I remember I went to our neighbor who was like 16, 17. And I was like, I want to ask you a question. And I was quite manipulative. I was like, you have to tell me the truth. She's like, what? I was like, you have to swear on your dad's whatever grave that you wouldn't. She was like, okay. And then I was like, how are babies made? And then she just looked at me like, and I remember this so clearly to this day. She grabbed like a piece of tissue and like the tiniest drawing with like a pen she drew. She went like that, like a vagina and a penis. She goes, this goes in here. And then she went like that. And then she like
Or get threw it
pushed
away.
the lid. Yeah. I was like, I knew it. But then I was so grossed out by it that I couldn't speak to anyone. So I remember I went to school and I put it upon myself to educate everyone. So I told my best friend and we would grab the kids one by one. I'd be like, yes, how babies are made. And most kids were like horrified. A few of them were like, no, that's not how I was made. I was like, how the hell do you know? And then, like, literally same day, I told everyone, as many kids as we could grab. Same day, the principal called me and someone told on me. And they took me and this other girl that we were informing everyone. They took us into the office and they screamed at us so much and told us that we're going to burn in hell, that we are like that we are being blasphemous. They made us face the wall, and it was such a hot day, and we had to wear the hijab and stuff. And I remember I was sweating under all these layers I was wearing. And for a whole day, they made us stand there and like just face the wall. And they were like, "We're gonna kick you out of school. You're gonna like end up on the streets when you grow up. Your future is ruined." I was so scared. And then they were like, "We gotta call your mom and dad and tell them what you're saying. Just wait till they find out what you're even talking about." And I remember like the principal came up to me. She's like, "Aren't you ashamed? You're not even crying." She's just screaming at me. And I think they hit us too. So this was my education around sex.
That's your introduction to sex.
Like, I remember when my mom told me she's pregnant with my sister, I was like, "Good. I can finally, like, look down and see what a woman's vagina looks like." And my mom was like, "What?" Like, I was so curious. But yeah,
You were normal. That's not like it's not unusual curiosity. That's what normal children want to know.
yeah. What happened then? I got my period age 9, and that's exactly around the time that my grades at school dropped. Then we left Iran, and I was no longer the cool, smart kid at school. I was kind of the naughty shithead. And then when we went to the refugee camp, there wasn't we did I didn't go to school for ages. There was a like languages school for some of the refugee kids. And then shortly after, when we were in between countries, I didn't go to school at all. And then we came to the UK, and of course, like it took me ages to even learn English. And I was always like the heart and soul. I was like the naughty kid. I had a lot of energy, but then I had to really suppress that. I had to be this quiet girl, and I was so self-conscious. I was so embarrassed, and I thought it was the most disgusting thing ever. Like I've never felt like that. And then after I learned English and graduated from school, I went to college. And in America, you have college here. As soon as you finish
Yeah.
school, you go to college, then you go to uni. That's where I was like, I have to make up for all those years that I lost. So I became really loud. I was like overly. I was like doing drugs. I was like making out with all the boys, making out with all the girls, like doing some self-destructive stuff. And throughout all this time, I didn't have sex. I remember always thinking, "Oh, my virginity is everything." And that suddenly literally changed overnight. And I was like, "What? Why am I protecting my virginity so much? Like, who says that's my value?" That kind of stuck with me from Iran. And I
Yeah.
remember I literally decided I don't want this anymore. And I went out and got laid with this really hot guy that I found at the student union within a night. And also, I didn't really have the opportunity to have sex because my dad was really controlling. Like, I had
Yeah.
to be home at a certain time. I wasn't really allowed to go out. Like, it was a series of things.
When was your first, what you would call a serious relationship?
My first ever proper serious relationship was when I was after my dad died.
Yeah.
There was a few guys here and there, nothing serious. And I wanted it that way. Especially after I lost my virginity, which was the very first time I went to uni. I went crazy. Like, I think in a year, I probably had sex with like 40 people. Easy. Like, and it wasn't even nice. Some of them weren't even treating me well. It was like it made me feel like I'm in control. It made me feel free. It felt good. I felt like I'm rebelling against everything that had held me back in
Mhm.
life. Um, until my father passed away, and I was in London, and there was this Iranian guy. And during the summer, I was working in this Iranian restaurant, and I was away from Iranians all this time until then. And there was this guy that kept pursuing me, kept flirting with me, love bombing me, and I wasn't used to it. And growing up, I was a tomboy. I was always playing football. Like, if anything, boys, I was never even one of the boys. I never felt attractive to be fancied. I mean, people did fancy me, but you know how some girls are like always pursued? I wasn't really like that. So this guy sees me like, I feel like I still do. I feel like I have a fundamental low self esteem when it
Mhm.
comes to my sexuality. I definitely do
Mhm.
as a woman. And I was just like, initially I was like, ugh. And then he kept pursuing. Then we made out and it was the most magical thing. But, and then we had sex and I was like so in love with him. I was obsessed with him. And I had never had sex with someone who I was in love with. Um, and then he left me and he was flirting with all these girls and then he kind of ghosted me. I was like, what? And he had this other friend that looked like him and I would see him in like bars in London. And then he was the guy, he was like the fat boy. He was the guy, very good looking. He had slept, like there wasn't a girl he hadn't slept with. And
Right.
he was kind of rude. Like he would see me and he was like very dismissive. And then he kind of started talking to me on Facebook, and I was like, "This guy likes me? This guy sees me? What?" And then him and I met up. And when we met up, I was like, I didn't put out. Honestly, his reputation was so bad. I was like, I'm definitely not going to sleep with this guy just to make a point because I can.
Right.
And I was going through this period where I was making boys like me and not sleeping with them. That started making me feel powerful. I would even like cuddle in bed with them or get really close to them and not sleep with them. And I was doing the same thing with this guy, and that worked. That made him really like me.
Yep.
And it took him ages to sleep with me. And then that became my first ever relationship. I was with this guy for like 3 years, maybe. And yeah, it was really deep love. Like I was obsessed with him. But he was very abusive. He kind of replaced my dad. He had drug addictions. He was very dismissive to my feelings. And he was like so controlling. He was like making me delete every single man from my Facebook. He made me stop talking to all my guy friends. I once was like, he was like, "Where are you?" I was like, "I'm with my friend." Like this guy, he stopped talking to me. He would give me silent treatments. But then we had really good sex, and I had never had like intimate sex like that, of course, because you become addicted to the dopamine, right? Then years later, I found out he cheated on me by like I had become this obsessed sick person. Like I remember for 6 months I made it my project to break into his Facebook to find out if he's cheating on me. So when I found out, I went crazy at him, and we used to take drugs together. Like it was a very very abusive relationship. And then he's actually 13 years clean now, and we're still in touch. I'm so proud of him. And as soon as he turned clean, he became this really nice man. He still had a lot of toxic stuff, but he changed, as you do. And then the second half of our relationship, I stopped wanting to have sex with him. And he was still like he still had the traits, but he was no longer that horrible toxic man that kind of mirrored my dad. Uh
Mm.
I'm such a cliche, aren't I? And and
Most people
then
are.
yeah. And then he actually broke up with me eventually because he was like, "I chose you when I was a drug addict. And if I'm to be on this recovery journey, I need to make fresh decisions." And I
Yeah,
was so
you
sad
need
and
to
I
make
cried.
better decisions, yeah.
Yeah. Um, but it was one of the best things that ever happened because imagine if I was still with him.
When you guys broke up, who came next?
Exactly the opposite to my ex. He was successful, he was hardworking, and he was healthy. He wasn't drinking, he wasn't doing drugs. I fell so madly in love with him. And we had this passionate kiss, and we got together very and he was love bombing me, whereas like the other guy was like very and I was like, oh my gosh, she's the opposite. Then we got together and it was magical. It was like we were obsessed with each other. But I still have trauma from him that still impacts me to this day. He would probably be worst person in the world. Like with the first guy, even though we had like quite toxic sexual stuff, he still made me feel sexy. He still made me feel desired. Whereas this guy didn't. First of all, he had premature ejaculation. I think the longest sex we had in a year and a half we were together was like less than 2 minutes. We would have sex and then he'd be like, "Oh, oh, don't move," just and it was a bit weird, but I wanted to be supportive. Yeah, he was just a horrible person. He was a horrible, horrible person, and he really put me down in so many ways. I remember like once we went to he was very stingy. Like I would sleep in his house and he would charge me in the morning £1.50 towards the cereal. Like that house thing that when I say stingy, that's what I mean. He was just
How long were you together?
for a year and a half. His dad was really flirty. And like I'd go to the bathroom to brush my teeth and his dad would come in, stand there and watch and would just have these long weird conversations. Or his dad was just really inappropriate. And he accused me of not making an effort with his family. And I was like, no, look, your dad is making me feel uncomfortable. Then he was like, what the fuck are you talking about? I brought many girls here. How come you're the first one? Like he basically accused me of flirting with his dad and making this up. And I felt really bad and I tried to make up with him and like it was just really horrible. And then later he broke up with me. It
Right.
was just the most abusive thing. So that's we were together for a year and a half. And after him, I did not date. I was just like, I am done. Like, fuck this.
So no relationship since?
Oh, no, no, no. So I didn't date for like 2.5 years. I threw myself at work. And then my friends were like, Sahar, like we got drunk. They were like, you need to meet someone. They made me a Tinder profile. They were like, just go and meet someone. And then it's a long story, but I found they swipe right and this nice looking British guy. And I was like, oh, that's not my type. Because in my head, after my dad died, I went immediately after Iranian boys.
Yeah.
And I was like, ugh. I went on, like, I finally met him. And he's honestly, I think he's the best thing that's ever happened to me. He's like this gorgeous 6'3" English guy. We've been together for like 6.5 years now.
Okay.
He is so respectful. He's so funny. He's so supportive. I could be at my worst and he loves me. I could be at my best and he loves me. Like, he just accepts me. He sees me.
That's a good start for me. I'm gonna have more questions for sure, but that's a good start for me. I mean, I feel like I have a really good idea of the bare bones, and I've already got a list of traumas in my head, so that's fine. And I'm sure there'll be more to be added to the list as we talk. But, what do you wanna get out of this? I think that's the last question I really wanna ask is what would you like to get out of this?
I mean, the most immediate thing, I have a weird relationship with sex, but I don't know what they are. I told you before, I feel like I'm in this dark room. And I know this because of how it's impacting my life. And I'm noticing it more and more as my life goes on. It's not, I've got pretty much most things sorted out in life. I mean, no one has everything sorted and everything is a process, but I have a good idea of where I am with things. I'm in a room with some light with most aspects. This is completely dark. And I want to understand what the hell is wrong with me. And I just, the best way I can describe it is I need you to help me see because I feel like I don't understand what's happening with me. But something is seriously wrong and I know it.
I like the image, and I'll keep that image, right, of being in this dark room and not being able to see. Um, Even when you talk about things you know were traumatic and you can say were traumatic, there's like a matter of factness about it.
I'm detached.
Yeah, you're intellectual and you're detached from it. I think the light will start to come when we're in it, because that's when you start making connections between things.
For me, and just before we close, the one connection I have made, and this is something that I'm very aware of, I don't see sex as something nice or pleasurable. I see it as something as a means. It was a means for me to rebel when I was a child. It was a means for me to be accepted. It was a means to be loved. It was a means to keep someone. It was a means to rebel against the oppression. It's just always been something, and it's never been something I've enjoyed just for me. And in a way, for me, sex is a bit icky.
One part of the work is working with all the trauma and untangling all of that. There's another part of the work that's separate, which is about learning how to enjoy sex again in a as this different person once some of this stuff is blown out the water and untangled. So, it's because it essentially gets right in the middle of your desires and developing desires. So, like, there are people where they would start to have, what would come into their head is a parent, right? When they're having sex because their parent was inappropriate. They may not have had sex with them, but they were inappropriate. All of a sudden, that's in their mind, and that's the end of the orgasm. So the way around it is to not be you,
Yeah.
and
There's
that
loads of things that,
ultimately feels really soul destroying.
and if I don't have to do it because I'm in a loving relationship with a partner that just like accepts me however I want, then why would I do it?
'Cause it's not
Because
currency. You don't have to have it as currency now, and orgasm, even the pleasure you get from orgasm isn't about pleasure. in that
No.
situation. Right. So that's part of what you're trying to figure out, like, where is my pleasure in all of this? Because I know intellectually that loving sex is supposed to be about, or any sex is supposed to be about pleasure. But for you, control has been absolutely essential in every aspect of that. So we'll shine lights, but I have no idea what we're going to find.
Feels good to kind of speak to you. Yeah, it's nice to kind of get those things that I normally make jokes about or not think about, put them on the table with someone who isn't judging or isn't, for someone who might have a solution.
What I say to people often is what I want people to have is choice, right? I
Mm,
want you to have choice as to whether you're intellectualizing something, choice as to whether you feel distant from something or you want to be in it. And right now you don't have choice
no,
because right now these are the amazing defenses that have kept you really involved with life and really thriving. I want you to have choice to keep those skills, but I want you to have choice to use them or not use them.
yeah, thank you. Me too.
And
And I feel,
that's why we call people who have PTSD walking wounded.
do you think I have sexual PTSD?
I don't know yet. I
Okay.
don't know yet, but you might. It's not, I mean, the label really isn't important, but there are enough signs
Mm.
that you might.
Okay. Um, so the session is finished. She initially warned me that it's going to be really traumatic, but it wasn't. It was kind of like sharing things that I've shared with, you know, partners or close friends with. I often make jokes about most of them. What was really interesting is sort of hearing myself talk about them in one place in a non-jokey way. Um, I always think that there are bigger problems than mine in the world, and that stops me from thinking about my issues. And it was reassuring to hear someone validate or even inform that some of what I've been through is actually pretty bad. Um, and it doesn't have to be as bad as what some other people have been through for it to be bad. One thing that stood out to me is how much I dissociate from pleasure when it involves me and my body and what makes me me and how I have to disassociate. And the fact that that could be having an impact on how I'm experiencing pleasure in other aspects of my life. Anyway, I feel tired. I'm going to turn this off. And yeah, I'm going to get some dinner and go to bed. I think that's what I'm going to do.